Hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Monday, the 12th day of August, 2024. And we left you yesterday with a bit of a dilemma. Recall, we had a few questions that were unanswered. On the one hand, there was a story that Iran was going to wait at least 2 weeks before attacking Israel, going to give a chance for the ceasefire talks to progress. And the U.S. and Iran had agreed to something like that. Then, on the other hand, there was a story that the attack from Iran was going to be imminent in the next couple of days. And so we got these two competing stories of what's going to take place. And then the competing stories about Sinwar. Did he want a ceasefire? Did he want Hamas and Israel to stop the hostilities? Or was he interested in a regional war? That's where we left it yesterday. And now, to make things more difficult, we're going to look at the stories that have broken since we talked to you last and try and summarize everything to put everything into perspective because it's a real mess. All right. Hamas has announced they will not show up for the hostage talks on Thursday evening in Cairo or maybe in Doha. I wasn't even sure where they're going to be, seemingly ending the possibility of a ceasefire and a hostage release. Israel, on the other hand, sees this as a negotiating technique, which will cause them to be pressured to give in to many of the demands of Hamas, much to their detriment. In other words, Hamas is saying, all right, we've already listed what we want. There's no more reason to talk, kind of take it or leave it. And Israel says, no, we have given our demands too, and they're not the same as yours. And so we're at a stalemate right now. As of now, there's not going to be any group from Hamas coming to these talks Thursday. Israel's going to send a delegation, but seemingly Hamas is not. And so what all does this mean? Now, looming in the background of all this is the possibility of an immediate attack from Iran or Hezbollah. Why? Because tonight is the 12th of the ninth day of Av. It starts tonight in Israel. And it's the one day out of the year where Israel mourns for the destruction of the first and second temples. They happen on the same day, 587 BC. The first temple was destroyed. AD 70, the second temple was destroyed. And there was talk, if you recall, about a week or two back, saying Iran may wait till the 9th of Av to attack Israel, just to remind them of their past losses with the destruction of the first and second temple, and then just make it all the worse by having this regional war. This is one of the things that seemingly are looming right now. There's a bunch of evacuations by Hezbollah of their people in Lebanon, of their offices there. There seems to be a lot of scurrying around, and there are reports from Israel that they expect an attack any time now, and it could very well be today or tomorrow. It's again starting tonight, Israeli time, is this day of mourning for Israel. So there's many possible scenarios, and what exactly will happen, we don't know. But we want to set the stage for you because there, again, like we said, there's so much going on. Okay, headline number one. This is from Breitbart. Hamas rejects hostage talk after CNN blames Netanyahu for the lack of a deal. This is some hilarious one here. Hamas has rejected hostage talks that were set for this week, hours after CNN published a poorly sourced article claiming that the terrorist group was serious about a deal, but Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, was not. Hamas announced late on Sunday that it rejects the invitation by the U.S., Qatar, and Egypt for a final round of negotiations over the Gaza hostage and ceasefire deal that was planned for Thursday. And the article goes on to ask the question why it matters, or make the statement why it matters. Hamas's announcement is a significant setback for the Biden administration's efforts to reach a hostage and ceasefire deal and prevent the Gaza conflict from escalating into a regional war. Now, earlier, CNN had reported from unnamed sources that Hamas leader Sinwar wanted a ceasefire deal. At least that's the message the Egyptian and Qatari mediators had conveyed to Israel in recent days ahead of this critical summit that's going to take place on Thursday, an Israeli source familiar with the matter said. Now, whether the Israeli prime minister wants a deal is shrouded in uncertainty. Netanyahu's allies have told journalists and other government officials that the Israeli prime minister is ready to make a deal, regardless of the impact of his governing coalition, two Israeli sources said. But the Israel security establishment remains considerably more skeptical of Netanyahu's willingness to strike a deal, giving fierce opposition from far-right ministers to his coalition. The so-called far-right ministers who have commented on a potential deal said that Israel should not free high-value terrorists who have murdered Israelis. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby rebuked Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich for expressing such sentiments. But Hamas, not Netanyahu, has been the consistent obstacle to a deal. Now, Vice President Kamala Harris has also been pushing a deal to no avail. On Saturday, she reacted to an unsubstantiated reports of civilian casualties in an Israeli attack on a Hamas position in a school compound by criticizing Israel, not Hamas, and calling for a ceasefire and hostage deal as soon as possible. What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, something that was appointed by former U.S. President Donald Trump, and were displaced for the second, third, or fourth time, she said, lecturing and shaming America's allies. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent. That's from Kamala Harris. Now, we have a story I was planning on doing before this story about Sinwar deciding not to send a delegation about Kamala Harris. And it's another story from the Jerusalem Post. You recall we had one about how terrible it would be destructive for Israel if Harris was elected president. Well, I have a further story on that. I'd like to do that. And I'm debating about almost doing a special segment because it needs to be said. If she is elected president, and it's not impossible, it would be horrific for both Israel and the United States of America. It would seal our doom as a nation, and it would put Israel in a more horrific position with no real ally in the world, because we have been their ally for so long, but she would not be their ally. Her actions and thoughts have already showed that. And so we need to talk about that in more detail. But right now, there's something that's more pressing, and that is what's taking place with respect to this meeting on Thursday and tonight, the 9th of Av, because recall, like we said, a number of people said it's likely they will wait to the 9th of Av, that is Iran, to attack, just to rub it into Israel that you first and second temple were destroyed, and now we're going to have a total destruction of you and your country from Hezbollah, from us, and from all our surrogates, from all 7 angles. So we'll see. So anyway, headline number 2, and this is where the Israelis are, where their heads are at. This is from Ynet News. Sinwar isn't avoiding deal talks. He's spotting an opportunity. This is what they think's going on. He's using this as a negotiating technique. The man is not stupid, but the Western, leaders fall for stuff like this. They think, oh, we've got to get him back to the table. We'll do anything. And what will they do? They will obviously pressure Israel to knuckle under, to give in to certain demands. Here's the analysis. Despite Hamas's leader's response saying the terror group won't be arriving for further talks pushed by mediators, Israel believes he has many reasons to do so, and that is to send a delegation. The Hamas statement made on Sunday saying it won't attend talks on a hostage release and ceasefire deal later this week shouldn't surprise anyone. In Israel, at least, no one showed major concerns. Hamas's statement was expected for several reasons. First, it's part of a tactic aimed at gaining leverage in negotiations. This holding negotiations requires nerves of steel, members of the Israeli negotiating team said on Sunday, stressing there will likely be more fake news and psychological warfare attempts by the terror group. In fact, it's likely we'll see more conflicting announcements, alongside pressure from mediators to hold the summit regardless by Thursday. However, beyond the psychological warfare aspect, it's hard to ignore the timing of Hamas's announcement. Shortly after reports in Israel saying Iran and Hezbollah are determined to launch attacks in the coming days, possibly a direct or even a coordinated attack, Sinwar, as is well known, sees the current tension as an opportunity to unite fronts, a dream he has had since the beginning of the war. Over the past 10 months, Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has repeatedly tried to ignite the region, including the West Bank, and has failed each time. Therefore, Haniya's assassination in Tehran and the assassination of Fuad Shukr in Beirut has created a rare opportunity for him, since Iran and Hezbollah's revenge will almost certainly provoke a strong Israeli response, which could drag the region to a multi-front war. U.S. President Joe Biden even mentioned this in an interview with CBS, saying that a regional war can easily break out. The biggest beneficiary of such a comprehensive war, of course, is Sinwar. Why? Because Israel would be deeply engaged with Hezbollah and Iran and its proxies, requiring additional forces to be deployed to the northern front. This would likely ease the pressure on Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Some in Israel estimate Hamas's announcement as also part of a facade. He wants to show solidarity with Hezbollah and Iran, not as someone negotiating with Israel during the offensive. It's a transparent move, But the main question is still what will happen on Thursday and whether Hamas will eventually show up for the talks. If the terror organization sticks to its position while Israel does attend to the summit, whose location is still unclear whether it's in Doha and Qatar or Cairo, Hamas will be blamed for derailing the deal. We've seen that Hamas is not keen to be perceived as intransigent in the past, but nothing has been concluded yet. There's still 3 days until the summit. There's plenty of time for things to change. Israel believes Hamas will ultimately indeed attend. Time will tell. And so then it goes on to what is Hamas's position. On Sunday, Hamas announced it's decided not to send representatives to the summit, claiming that further rounds of negotiations only prolong the war and give Israel legitimacy. We call on mediators to present a plan to implement what was agreed upon on July 2nd instead of holding new negotiations. Now, recall July 2nd, Hamas agreed with these Egyptian and Qatari mediators about all these steps that would needed to be taken to end the ceasefire and the war, and they were all benefiting Hamas. None of them were benefiting Israel, and Israel couldn't go for a number of them. But they say, well, if we just go back to the July 2nd agreement, then we can have a ceasefire deal. So entering further rounds of talks, they say, new offers only provide cover, they say, for Israel, the occupation, the ones who are occupiers here, and it give them time to win the war of annihilation. So there's no reason to me. July 2nd, we already agreed to all these demands, and we put what we want. Why not just do that? And if this happened, what would take place? Basically, Hamas would remain in power. The area between Gaza and Egypt would not be controlled by Israelis any longer, where there are right now, the Philadelphia corridor, the 8-kilometer stretch there that they've taken over, keeping munitions, keeping people, keeping all kinds of things going in back and forth from Egypt to Rafah there at the border. And so they want the Palestinian Authority or some other group to control that, which again would start the whole thing over again to let Hamas build up and remain in power. So that's what they want. And they're saying, look, we've already decided on this. Why have any more negotiations? Now, of course, what we're going to see is tremendous pressure on Israel for the Biden administration because he's dying for a deal. He wants this deal before he's out of office. So this is where we're at right now. And so they've accepted, like they said, these ideas in the past. Hamas and the negotiators. So, and even the United States agreed with some of them, it's told. So what's the problem? So what's Israel's position? The Israeli negotiating team isn't overly concerned about Hamas's announcement, understanding it as part of a tactic to gain leverage in psychological warfare, and it will continue until the summit is held. They'll believe that Hamas will eventually show up. So what's going to happen? And here's the issue. There's so many possibilities and with speculation abounding on all sides. As we mentioned, looming in the background tonight, Tisha B'Av, which many have predicted would be an appropriate time for Israel's enemies to attack them as they mourn for the past destructions of the first and second temple. Now, we're going to talk about this in more detail if a war doesn't break out by the time we do our second edition of Breaking News and talk a little bit about Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the temples, and how the temple is center stage. It has been center stage in the past, and God's dealing with Israel and will be in the future with the last days Bible prophecy. So all this is coming together really interestingly right now. And we do want to take sometime in the near future to talk about Kamala Harris and the horrific president she would be for the United States and for Israel, much to the detriment of both countries. And again, this is from another Israeli editorial that the Jerusalem Post put up last night, which really lays it all out very clearly. And I'd like to, take some time to go through that. But right now we have these other pressing matters. So never a dull moment, is there? So hang with us here. And again, for information on what will happen at the time of the end, please see our website, Educating Our World. We have a dozen books there on Bible prophecy, all available for free download on the PDF on Educating Our World, and particularly 25 Signs We're Near the End, where we go specific with what the Bible predicts is going to happen at the time of the end. Please tell others this is where they can get the information of what the Bible has to say about this. And that's why we always go to it first. And then afterwards, we see what the stories are because they keep changing, but the Bible never changes. So we will stick with that. All right. Again, never a dull moment, is there? It's like almost like a continuing soap opera. What will happen next? Well, we'll find out. And later today, we'll be back with you to give you the latest updates. Until then, I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless you.